one of my favorite Pat Cummings moments was when we tried a case against a cab company, and we had a gal who she was walking across a crosswalk. She's a nurse in near West Suburban Chicago, and she got hit, and she had Parkinson's disease, and so she had a shoulder problem, but you couldn't have surgery because of the Parkinson's, and so her medical bills were under 20 grand, maybe.
It's like 18 or 19 grand.
Yeah. And we were taking on this cab company, which are notorious in Chicago for never paying anything. And so, early on, my first call was to the cab companies, insurance companies, saying, listen, this lady's hurt pretty bad. She can't have surgery, but it's permanent injury. Here's all the documents. Here's all the medical bills. You just pay us the limits. And I remember the laughter on their side. I mean, or hidden laughter from the insurance company and its lawyers, basically saying, "We're never paying you on this. Medical bills aren't high, et cetera, and whatever." And so Patrick and I had to actually impanel a jury on that case, and in Cook County, and talk about a case that was it about a week long?
Yeah, I want to say 4 or 5 days. That sounds right.
Yeah, and I think that was the case, and I may be wrong, but that is maybe one of the cases where you took your first deposition of the expert.
Yeah, the defense expert orthopedic was the first deposition I took, and then I handed him over to you on cross-examination, and you took care of him.
Yeah, right. And so, but we ended up getting a very substantial punitive damages verdict against this cab company, which was affirmed on appeal, right?
It was.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if you want to have some fun and you just want to Google some cases, Google punitive damages and Shannon Law Group, and you'll find that case. And then you can look at other ones for all the other ones we're talking about, C.H. Robinson, et cetera.
Well, and the Baumricker appeal, it's heavily cited to the Talcott case. So you made your own law, and then you made the court follow it.
Well, yeah, but that one I really liked because we got I think we got the verdict that day.
It was same day. Yep.
Yeah, same day. And so our client, who was a hero in my world, Marge. So Marge, they offered her zero forever, and then during trial, they said, "Hey, we'll give you X, and not even near the policy limits." And this brave lady who was living paycheck to paycheck basically just said, "No, I want to see what the jury has to say." Talk about gutsy. Talk about a little bit of pressure that Pat and I felt. But I loved it. I loved every minute of her saying, "Hey, listen, let's see what the jury has to say." And the jury had a lot to say. They gave her, what we asked for the compensatory damages. And then they gave her, I think it was like, how much did they give her in punitive damages?
$500K.
So $500,000 in punitive damages on a case that they should have paid those punitive damages. And they did. They paid every dime of that. And so I was, that was a fun case for, in retrospect, fun. None of it was fun during it because these trials are just like, I don't know, gut wrenching because it's a ton of risk that goes in when you impanel a jury, because they could come back and say, "We don't agree with you and we don't like you and you're getting nothing." And that's the people you could get. My experience with jury trials has been that they usually get it right, and maybe not totally embraced our viewpoint on the thing, but they usually get it right. They usually will apply a common sense, but we as plaintiffs and lawyers are writing the movie, and it's got to be a truthful movie. It's got to be, we have the burden of proof. We have to put on the evidence. We have to make sure that we have the witnesses there. We have to make sure that we put on everything that we should. We're the ones that have to expose all the things that happened that led to this. And in that one, what basically happened is they never interviewed this cab driver. Never interviewed him, didn't know him, didn't know anything about him, and hired him, didn't know about all of his background, et cetera. And this was not a great guy. And so they lied about it, and these folks, these good folks from Cook County, told them so, and that's what I like about our business.
Yeah, and in that case, the driver didn't show up to trial, and I think that showed up in the verdict is that the jury wasn't happy that he didn't consider it important enough to be there.
Is this a type of field where you're sitting in your office and you never go out and learn new things, or is it something that you constantly got to learn?
So one of the reasons I really like this job and trucking in particular is that there is no sort of boilerplate case. There's some through lines that are consistent with any auto case or any personal injury case really, but I really enjoy the cases where I have to totally immerse myself in a world that I'm not familiar with and learn the ins and outs of it so that I can talk to people who know a lot more about the subject and figure out, kind of why things happened and if they shouldn't have happened, why they shouldn't have happened.
So what do some lawyers that take on these cases that don't have the background, experience, training, et cetera, what do they do or not do that's a problem?
I think the biggest mistake in trucking cases is treating it like it's a motor vehicle case. You can have, lawyers that kind of have some background in personal injury who can hang their own shingle. And for the most part, they might be able to handle most auto cases, if they're, again, there's no boilerplate, but if they're not a ton of complexities like a rear end type collision. But with a truck, even if it seems obvious, the liability or the damages, there's a lot more to it. And so if you just treat it like a motor vehicle case, you might not be peeling back the onion as much as you need to. You might not be seeking all the documents that you should be getting that can help prove your case. So that's one that I've seen before. And we've had a number of referring guys who they handle a ton of auto accident cases, and they say for the trucking ones, we're going to let these guys run with it because it's a different animal.
Right. And, one of the things that I've seen, let me know if you think I'm wrong, is recognizing the injury. So when I was a defense lawyer for 8 years, we handled a lot of really major injuries. I tried a case in which the plaintiff claims that she became a paraplegic as a result of a car crash. She blamed it on the vehicle, the lack of proper seat back, restraint system, all these types of things. And I really, to this day, don't believe that the plaintiff ever understood the mechanism of injury. Or actually the injury itself. And so what happens sometimes with these cases, if you get a lawyer that's not sophisticated and understands the medical records, understands mechanism of injury, understands kinesiology, all these types of things that we need to understand in these types of cases, they'll not see a brain injury. I mean, have you had any brain injury cases?
Yeah, certainly, yeah.
And in those cases, what are the complexities of that?
Well, one of the complexities is that the patient or the plaintiff is often had a limited capacity to communicate with you. So you might not be able to get all the information from the client just because they might not have a memory of it. Like we were talking about the one that had some post-traumatic amnesia right after the crash, so she had no recollection of it. So yeah, that's certainly a part of it. Another one is that it's not something that always shows up on scans. So broken bones, torn rotator cuffs, those things are really easy to explain to an insurance company and say, you've had 10 million other cases with these type of injuries. They show up on the scans. Brain injuries often don't, certainly not on like x-rays. And we've had to go get like more detailed MRI type scans that are sort of, they're solid medicine, but they're newer and they're not always used in a clinical setting. But those are things that we've had to go out to, because ultimately our job is to explain to the jury what the injury is. And so we need to use our experts to help us understand it so we can communicate that to jurors in ways that they can understand.
Right. And part of that is making sure that we rule out injuries. For example, we had a client that her kids were telling us that she was not the same as before the crash. her friends were telling us that she wasn't the same as before the crash. She was had some underlying issues before, but now was way back to a base that it was not good prior to the crash. And it made sense because it was a high speed crash, and but it really wasn't showing up on some of the scans. And that's what you were talking about. And so having the sophistication and ability to have these folks examined by experts, and for them to put them through the tests they need to put them through, et cetera, because the other side is going to get somebody to say, oh, this person had a mild concussion, which concussion means brain injury, just for the listeners. Concussion means brain injury. So a mild brain injury that got better. And so they're paid to say that. They will say that. They will say that no matter what is, So our job is to make sure that we can get in front of the jury, not only what their life was like beforehand and afterwards, but also experts that can explain this. And so we're talking with folks that are the leaders in their field, and that's expensive. So a lot of this comes down to with some lawyers is they're not willing to spend the money to have their client evaluated. And that's a difference, I think, in folks that take larger cases and they don't, is that, we're willing to spend the money because we understand that you need that to prove your case. I can't tell you how many times when I was a defense attorney, I was looking at lawyers that were handling these huge cases and not spending any money on the case and missed the biggest injury that the person had. And I was sitting there and I'd be like, what are you doing, pal? Why are you taking this case? You see this as some sort of, way that you're going to hit the lottery or work for your case, but you have no idea what you're doing. And did a disservice to his client. One of the reasons in the back of my mind, I said, listen, if and when I become a plaintiff's attorney, we're not going to be like that. We're going to make sure that we spend the money and make sure that that's exposed, that the defense is exposed, and we get to the bottom of not only liability, but damages, because that's what the cases are about.